Recently started to rewatch Gotham, and after going through it again, I can see there's certain villains in Gotham that just did justice from the comics. Or some they even improved from the comics. But then there's some who Gotham failed hard. Well, maybe that's too negative, but I think they certainly tried not enough with them, and it just doesn't work. Now, this will be part one of two, as there's a lot of villains to go over, and I can't go over them all in just one video. So this will be the major villains, and then part two will be the more smaller villains. So let's get into it. Penguin. Let's start off with the most positive note that we can, and that is Penguin, played by Robin Lord Taylor. Oswald Cobblepot is probably not just the best villain on the show, but the best character overall, and that's coming from someone who never cared for the Penguin from the comics. Here you really understand the Penguin by people who affect his life, either it be his parents or his surrogate mom, Fish Mooney. Penguin was given multiple separate storylines that built off of each other, and every one of them strengthened his character, as we got to see his journey from being just an umbrella boy to the Penguin we all love. Although I loved where he started from too. I genuinely could make an entire video just about how good Penguin from Gotham is and how he's the perfect villain, but I can't stay too long on this character because, as you know, we have a lot of other characters to talk about, and even though as much as I love Penguin, there's a lot of other characters who deserve to be talked about as well. The Riddler. Another great character from the show. While not Penguin level great, his character was still a joy to watch as he became the iconic Riddler. At times, I did feel like his character took a backseat to Penguin, but that's understandable because how great Penguin was. But at the end of the day, I did think Enigma was still a great villain. Even when I do believe that the Lee stuff, in my opinion, was a kind of a misstep for his character, and Lee's, I always found them to just be very unsettling as a couple, especially seeing Enigma murdered her best friend while he was dating her. But at least by the final season, he was back to being a 9 out of 10 villain. And no disrespect to Enigma for me saying he's a 9 out of 10, because just Penguin just brought the bar so high, I don't think anyone can ever reach that high again. Catwoman. While people dislike a heroic Selina Kyle, I personally prefer a more hero-like Catwoman. Fits with the idea of her and Batman having a flirtation, as I've always wondered why would Batman be flirting with a villain. Selina's journey from being a street kid to Catwoman was very well done, along with getting the base idea of being Catwoman from Tabitha. And making her her mentor, I think, brings a kind of realism to the idea of Catwoman, making it more than just the idea of her dressing up in a cat suit, than more or less the idea that she was inspired to be Catwoman. Jeremiah. Well, I know a lot of people online usually like to compare Jeremiah and Jerome, but I didn't want to. That's also a reason why there must be a part two, because Jerome will be part of part two, even though I said it was more minor villains that are going to be part two, which is correct for the most part, but Jerome will also be a part of it. So here we're going to be talking about Jeremiah. I really like Jeremiah. He wasn't my favorite Joker, but he was a pretty good one. He was threatening, and even though I already said this, but I do prefer Jerome. But I still think Jeremiah is still a good villain, and I really like the idea of basing his look on the Jack Nicholson version of Joker, while having Jerome being more based on the comic book version of Joker. Poison Ivy is a really odd one. While I didn't dislike her final destination in Gotham or where she started, her character was at her best in the middle. I thought Megan Geha, I think that's how I pronounce her name, I don't know how to pronounce it, was the best actress for her. I wouldn't have recasted her to Payne List, who I thought was also a good Poison Ivy, but Megan was certainly the best. Poison Ivy is one of my favorite Batman villains, and I'd love to just see her in live action at all. But I thought her story arc by the end of the series wasn't as strong as I thought it should or could be. No hate to Payne List, I just thought Megan was a better Poison Ivy. Payne was an okay Poison Ivy, but, you know, I thought Megan was the perfect version of setting up who she's going to be one day. While Payne I thought was more or less just kind of basic evil villain with plants. Scarecrow is another one of my favorite Batman villains, who I thought had a really strong start, but he then just became a henchman to the Joker, or Jokers. But he still had a great ghoulish look. I thought he deserved more time in the sun. Also, is it just me, or did they kind of forget how old he was? Because he's the same age as Bruce in Season 1 and the start of Season 4. By the end of Season 4, he's presented as if he is the same age as Mad Hatter and Joker. It's very confusing. He was put in Arkham is a prison for insane adults. he did get his territory in season 5 as his own, and where he was meant to have his own experiments, but because season 5 got shortened, we only got to see him once, and it was very, very briefly. But I still love seeing that at all. Personally, I think the Scarecrow could have been a lot better, but I'm happy that he at least appeared at all. Because when he first appeared in season 1 and disappeared, I thought he was never going to come back. So I was happy that he at least came back and he got his, his ghoulish type garbs and stuff. Because I just love seeing that. Mr. Freeze, similar to Scarecrow, I loved where his character started, but then he just kind of became Penguin's henchman or bodyguard. Which, although I will say, gave him great opportunities for great, amazing one-liners, and he had a great look with his suit and white hair. He stuck out, but his story overall just kind of went nowhere. And when he joined the Joker's team, he got less to do, as he was no longer the only, one of only pizzazzing henchmen Penguin had. And then, because when he joined the Joker's group, the entire group was all full of pizzazz, so Mr. Freeze no longer stood out. And he was also meant to have his own territory, but we never got to see that. Either way, I like Mr. Freeze, and I'm just a little bit sad with how his character was treated on the show. Mad Hatter. I'll just say this, I never liked Mad Hatter in the comics. But I'm trying to look at this from a non-biased situation. And on the show, the character was pretty faithful to the comics. He was given a lot to do with being a big bad, although his sister stuff was new, which I also really didn't like. I think anyone who likes or loves Mad Hatter from the comics will enjoy his character on the show. Personally, I just don't like Mad Hatter. I've never liked the whole Alice in Wonderland stuff. I've never liked the whole just Tweedledee, Tweedledum stuff. I just never liked it. But that's my opinion on Mad Hatter. So I would, like I said, if you really like Mad Hatter, you're probably going to like the version of the character on the show. Tigress, a character who I'm surprised was even on Gotham, since she's not a Batman villain, but a Wildcat one. But regardless, I thought she made a great predecessor to Selena Kyle, teaching how to become the Catwoman. While she herself did die, which I thought was kind of a waste, I can't complain too much, since she's not really a Batman villain, and in the comics, she's only ever appeared 70 times, of which she doesn't do anything really, except for be a boxer. So this character is very different from her character from the comics, even her name is different. But overall, I did enjoy Tabitha's character, and I would have loved to see her continue in season 5 if they didn't kill her right at the start of it. Solomon Grundy, a character on the show who I think journey was impressive, but when he became Grundy, his character was kind of fast forward, which ended up leading him to no longer being Grundy and then dying. I think Butch or Grundy was still a great character, even if I think his character being killed off was kind of weird and kind of a waste and really confusing because he's meant to be alive by the time Batman is Batman. Either way, I thought Grundy and Butch were great characters, or character, because they're kind of 2 and 1, it's confusing. But honestly, overall, after watching Stargirl and their version of Grundy, this version of Grundy doesn't seem as impressive anymore. And also, his character didn't really go anywhere after, becoming Grundy, which I thought was very surprising, seeing how his character being Grundy was going to be such a big deal. It never really worked. Or at least it didn't really work for me. Opinion may vary. Barbara Keane, despite being a very different character on the show than in the comics, I still love this version of her. She had shades of Harley Quinn, very strong ones, while still being her own character. And I thought her journey from being, an art gallery owner to not art gallery owner, but you know what I mean. To be someone who works in an art gallery, to being a serial killer, to a maniac, to a queenpin, then to being redeemed, honestly worked. It was a very interesting take on the inside of someone's psyche, and we got to see what made her tick. And I honestly really like this version of the character so much, I would have loved to see it maybe bleed back in the comics, but although that's probably unlikely. And overall, I would say this version of the character is also, I think, a little bit too similar to Harley Quinn, which also, I think, makes it a little hard to introduce this version into the comics as well. But all other people I've seen online also really dislike this version of the character, so who knows. Lady Firefly, one of Gotham's original characters who made their way into the comics, I really enjoyed her 2-episode origin. showing her empathy and struggle which drove her to insanity. But afterwards, she just became a simple bodyguard of Penguin who, unlike Mr. Freeze, wasn't given great one-liners. And that was really where her character stayed. I can't complain too much because, like I said, she's an original character, but I think there's a lot to her that could have been explored rather than just being a bodyguard. And last but not least, Clayface. While the showrunners revealed that there were future plans for Basil, they never came to be. I didn't dislike this version of the character, he just was very different from Clayface from the comics, or any version of Clayface at all. Instead of being a former actor turned clay monster, he was just simply a shapeshifter Hugo Strange made. And that's really it. And that's how you end a video with probably the least interesting of them all. We went from Penguin to shapeshifter nerfed Clayface. So what do you think? Do you like these characters? Do you not like any of them? Who are your favorites? Please leave that all down below. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.